I'm going to answer the question in this video, can your narcissistic child change? I am sad to say that the most watched videos on my channel are videos about narcissistic children, narcissistic adult children, and also narcissistic teens. It's a reflection on the state of our world and our culture and just the in so many ways, the problems that we have in our current world, that this is such a prevalent problem. So can your narcissistic child change? My answer is, it depends. It depends on a number of things. The first one is how narcissistic is your child? Is your child narcissistic personality disorder, meaning your child has all the narcissistic traits or enough of them to be diagnosed according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of mental illness, mental disorders? Is your child going to qualify as narcissistic personality disorder, which means that in order to have a personality disorder, which are by nature hard to change because they are the wired personality of that person has to be that way in all their relationships, not just with their spouse, not just with a parent, but at work, with friends, with spouse, with children, with parents, everything. Typically starts manifesting by the early 20s. So that would be, doesn't have to be when the child is very young, but at least by the early 20s, and it's going to be across the board in all relationships. Now, you may not see it the same way in all of those places because the narcissist is going to be very charming often to people in the work environment, or when you're out in public and you're with that narcissist, your child is not going to do the things to you in public in front of people that would bring reproach and criticism that the child will do one-on-one with you. But at least those things do come up. Like if a person at this child's work was to try to take credit for something or criticize that person's going to get vitriol like you would get if you try to cross your narcissistic child, that type of situation. So is your child diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, which means that is going to be very difficult to get changed, versus is your child over here on the other side with just some narcissistic traits? When I teach classes with people with difficult family members, most of the people in the class think that their family members are narcissistic, at least in some way. A lot of them think that they are full-on narcissists. And according to the DSM, there is not like something like 1.5 max to 2% of people in the population are narcissistic personality disorder. So they're not all narcissists, but a lot of them have narcissistic characteristics. Now, addicts are by nature self-centered. Narcissists are self-centered. Narcissists are self-focused. Narcissists are selfish. They don't consider other people's feelings. They don't even really have full awareness that other people exist and matter. Everything's about them. Addicts are necessarily narcissistic when they're in their addiction because the addiction comes first. So the addict is putting themselves first because the addiction is demanding that it be satisfied over everything. But when an addict is sober or clean or not engaging in the addiction and is not craving the addiction, not going to be narcissistic unless they're also narcissistic personality disorder or narcissist. So that is one of the confusions. So you've got to look at how narcissistic. Some characteristics, a lot of characteristics. The more characteristics the person has, the more characteristics your child has, the more characteristics that are there strongly versus just kind of once in a while, the less possibility you are going to have there be change. The next one is who is reinforcing it and how. So a very common situation with narcissistic children that people are having trouble with is there might be a divorce maybe, and your ex-spouse wants the kids aligned in his or her life, and that person will reward the kids for being in their lives. So it would be giving them money, giving them fancy trips, being the cool dad or the cool mom that doesn't discipline, that doesn't have any requirements. And in order for this person to get the kids to come over toward them, they are aligning with the kids and aligning against you. So they would be talking negatively about you and giving the kids reasons to be with them. And when narcissists do this, narcissists pull them over, take them away from you, and continue to reinforce the narcissism in the children by giving the kids what they want. Because as long as if a narcissistic parent is getting a narcissistic child to side with them, they're both really, really happy, right? They're together, they're stroking each other's egos, they're giving each other narcissistic supply, they're doing this, and they're both getting stuff out of it. That makes it hard for the kid to see, oh my gosh, I'm not treating my mom right, or I'm not treating my dad right, because that person is reinforcing it. So that is, who's reinforcing it? Is it your parent? Like sometimes you have a grandparent who's narcissistic, who gets positive strokes for getting a grandchild to align with the grandparent against the child, or the parent, the mother. That's confusing. Let's say Grandma Rose wants to get back at her daughter Sally, because Grandma Rose is narcissist. And so to get back at Sally, Grandma Rose aligns with Sally's daughter Hannah. And when Grandma Rose gets Hannah on her side, she does it by talking against Sally, her daughter, Hannah's mom. She does it by getting her to talk against her mom, and also by giving her things that Sally doesn't give her daughter Hannah. So Grandma gives Hannah trips, she gives her money, she gives her everything she wants. When mean bad mom says no, you can't have a car, Grandma Rose buys her the car. So by reinforcing the narcissism of the child to align with the grandparent, with Grandma Rose, instead of her mom, and to turn against her mom, Grandma is feeding her with things. She's feeding. One of the things that often contributes to a child being narcissist is the child getting material things and having shallow values with it. And those are two of the things that are really strong emphasis on materialism and having very shallow values and having an unnatural affection or support of a parent. So by crossing the parent, going against her parent, aligning with Grandma, getting things from Grandma to do it, and for putting material things, there's 3 traits right there that are reinforced of narcissism by that dynamic. So if you've got somebody who is reinforcing it, who is giving the child things, that more that child is given, the more that child is narcissistic in the child's characteristics, the longer that they have been there, those traits, the harder it's going to be for that child to pay the price of turning against Grandma Rose and going back to her mom. Because if that child, if Hannah was to all of a sudden say, hey, Grandma Rose, I don't feel right about doing this to my mom, Grandma Rose is going to come down on her, and she's going to say, really, you want to do that? Well, give me the car back, and you're not going to be getting your monthly allowance, and then you're going to be doing this, this, and that. And that's going to be very threatening. It's going to make very hard for that child to go back to that mom and show the mom that she cares, because she's going to pay a high price for doing that. So depends on who's reinforcing it and how, along with how many narcissistic characteristics do you have and how long have they been there. Now, the third one is it causing problems in this child's life outside of the relationship with you, the parent? If it is causing problems in this child's marriage, if it is causing problems in with this child's own children, or causing problems in this child's work and friendships, and this child is starting to see a pattern, and is it being affected by that, and is getting feedback from people and having struggles that the child has to deal with because of the narcissism, that increases the possibility that the child would do some soul searching and possibly change. But if the child is not experiencing problems, in fact, if the child is experiencing nothing but benefits from being narcissistic, then that decreases the chance that the child would have a reason to change. Because if the child is the only problem in the child's life is the problem that the child is just being narcissistic with you, then that is kind of reinforcing the fact that everything else is going great. And the only problem I have in my life is mom or mom and dad, who are, being demanding of me, and they're being mean, and they're being selfish, and they're putting themselves first, and they're being jerks like they always have been. And all of that points to you being the only problem and everything else going great. The next one is, will someone confront the child, not you, but somebody else even, confront the child with the problems? So will a spouse say, hey, I don't like the fact that you're doing this? Or maybe a grandparent, or if you're divorced, the other parent, or maybe the other siblings, will they confront the child and say, hey, you're not treating mom right, you're not treating dad right, like this isn't right of what you're doing? Will they do that? Or will they just be quiet about it, and by being quiet, they're being complicit in it, they're going along with it, they're being afraid to bring it up? Nobody defends you, basically what I'm saying. Who's defending you? Who's standing up and saying you're narcissistic and you're doing these things to mom or dad? Or, yeah, mom and dad are not the only ones that think you're narcissistic. Mom and dad are not the only ones that have problems with your behavior. So the more people that you will have that will stand up and say the same thing you're saying about these kids or this kid, the higher the likelihood that this kid will change, because it's not just you. If it's just you, that decreases the possibility. Now, the next one is standards, morals, and character. Does this child have standards, morals, and character inside of them? And I know a lot of parents will say, I raised my kid with that. Well, yes, you did. And that's good. And it's there somewhere. And that's a good thing. Problem we have is what the kid gets in the home is not a very good, it's not a very strong competitor to education, culture, movies, music, and all the other things that influence the child. So values and morals that the child has gotten in the home, character traits the child has been taught, they're there, but they are easily squashed down, replaced, and pushed out by all of the other things that have influenced the child, which is one of the reasons that we have so much narcissism. And I have people that write me and will say, I raised my child right. I was a single mom. I sacrificed. I did nothing but give my child everything my child needed, or I was nothing but sacrificing for my child. I was there all the time. I raised my child with morals. We raised our children in Christian school. We sent them to Christian college. We did this and we did that, or I did everything to help my daughter who had her, baby when she was a single parent, And then she went to college and I took care of her child and I helped her. I let her live at home. I gave her money. I got her on her feet. And now she's just literally turned against me. So all of these things, I tend to, somebody writes me that, I recognize they could be telling me a story that's not true, but for the most part, I accept what people say. And I know for a fact that there are many parents out there who have done everything right, and they have kids that are very narcissistic to the point that they've even cut off the relationship and even kept their grandkids away from them so that they have no relationship with their child or the child's kids, in other words, their grandkids. So it is literally a epidemic, and our society is very narcissistic, very self-centered, and it is a tragedy, and it's causing a lot of pain for a lot of people. Now, those values that the person could have could be deep down inside. Those standards or values could be, I need to obey God and honor my parents, or it's wrong to treat people bad, or family is important. Even if you don't like your family, even if you don't love everything about them, you have to have your family in your life. So when that person goes against that and cuts a parent off, or cuts both parents off and cuts off the grandkids, it's going against what that person believes, and at least there's going to be some striving internally and some discomfort with that. And the person's going to have to work hard to rationalize it. And the harder the person has to work to rationalize it, the more possibility there is that another idea will get in there, and they'll start to think, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe this isn't the right thing to do. Or something that they hear will kind of like poke a hole in their, the little protection that they've put up, or their logic of saying, I don't have to have anything to do with my parents, or my parents are mean because they won't give me everything I want. I can't tell you how many stories I hear from people that their kids cut them off when the parents told the kids, you're old enough to not get any more financial assistance from us. Like, we've helped you for this long and we're done now. And then the kids are like, fine, then we're done with you. I mean, that's just so not natural to do that. And think about that character trait. It's so shallow. The only reason you have a relationship with your parents is as long as they give you stuff. It could be a punishment tactic, like, I'll just tell them I'll cut it off, and then cut off the relationship, and then they'll back down and they'll give me stuff. But again, how shallow is that? It's so sad. So those next one is your child open to God, to the Holy Spirit? Because we know that the Holy Spirit strives within all of us. The Holy Spirit's purpose of being in the world is to lead us into truth and to convict us of sin. The Holy Spirit, Jesus sent the Holy Spirit when he left. The Holy Spirit is everywhere, and the Holy Spirit is going to be pointing out truth. So when we look at our children and we see our children are having all these problems, our children are not open to us speaking truth to them. And anytime we do, they do typical narcissistic reaction, which is to rage, to scream, to threaten, to punish you, to be extremely cold to you. That's narcissists, when you confront them, are cold and punitive. So you try to confront that person, and every time you're risking being shut off temporarily or permanently. But the Holy Spirit can strive within their heart, their conscience, can get to them in many different ways. Like I said, bring other people into their life. So is your child open to the Holy Spirit? Holy Spirit is doing his work at all times. We as human beings have the ability to choose. We get to choose to shut ourselves down to the Holy Spirit, or choose to open ourselves up to the Holy Spirit. If your child is open to the Holy Spirit, increased chance that will bring change. If your child is not open to the Holy Spirit, open to God, God's conviction, and open to the being, having their heart stirred, then that would be a less of a chance of change. The next one is can your child self-evaluate at all? So you, to be healthy, have to be able to self-evaluate. And self-evaluate means look at yourself honestly, to be able to say, Was I okay when I did that? Like, you got to be open to being convicted and to feeling what, and asking yourself, was that all right? Did I treat my mom and dad right? Or did I respond correctly? Or was I too mean? Or was I too harsh? Or, was that not okay? If you can't self-evaluate and see sometimes that you do wrong, that sometimes, yeah, you know what, that wasn't right. I stepped over a line on that one. I overreacted. If you cannot do that, then you are not able to look at yourself. And somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, somebody with borderline personality disorder over here, somebody who's psychotic or sociopath, not going to be able to look at themselves and see the truth about themselves, not going to be able to evaluate themselves accurately. If they do try to evaluate themselves, they're going to justify everything, or they're going to be completely unaware of the fact that they do anything wrong. That's all the way over to here to somebody who evaluates themselves and sees nothing but wrong in them, which is also not possibly true. There's not anybody that has everything bad about them. So the balance is to be able to look inward and to see, am I okay there, or am I not okay there? So to be able to know your motives, to know your heart, to know what you're thinking, to know what you're feeling, to be able to look and see truthfully, what did I mean when I said that? Was I trying to be mean? Was I trying to be snotty? Was I trying to be punitive? Did I try to hurt that person, or did that just come out of my mouth accidentally? Did I not mean to say that, but the way that it came off? And we've got to be able to answer those questions. If your narcissistic child can self-evaluate accurately, increased chance that he or she will change, because you self-evaluate, you get good feedback, then you can be open toward feeling like you didn't do something right. If there's no ability to self-evaluate, or the self-evaluation is all, yep, I'm good, I'm okay, then probably not likely to change. So I haven't given you definite answers in terms of this will or will not happen. And I just told you that I would give you criteria and questions that you could kind of answer, areas you could look at and to say, maybe there is some hope of change. For a lot of you, someday your kids will change. Someday there will be a change of heart as they mature, as life happens to them, as things happen, and they recognize that they've been cold, or they've been harsh, or they've been punitive, or they've been shallow, or they've been wrong in how they've treated you. It could be getting sick. It could be having a life crisis of their own. It could be their own child turning against them and then realizing, oh my gosh, I know what I put my parent through. It could be that narcissist in their life coming against them. It could be job loss. It could be all kinds of things. There is a possibility that life could happen, and that could cause there to be a change of heart and a coming back to you. And for some of your kids, it's going to be maturity. And also, for those especially that are young, and this is just beginning, you're seeing it in your teenager or your very young 20-something, you can try boundaries. You can try saying no. You can try slowly weaning them off the financial help. Work on more mutual respect in the relationship and reshifting your relationship to being more of a healthy adult to adult relationship, and see if all of that produces some change, and get your child to the point where your child sees, hey, you know what, I don't want to have those shallow values, and I'm not going to just expect my parents to take care of me or threaten to cut them off. So I need to tell you that all of my videos, books, resources, classes, studies are for you, not just the ones that are labeled narcissistic adult children or narcissistic children or narcissists, because my whole ministry, Change My Relationship, is for people in difficult relationships, in any difficult relationship with any difficult person. All of the things apply. You need to learn to take care of yourself. You need to learn to face your fears. You need to learn to set boundaries. You need to learn to speak the truth. You need to learn to quit trying to force somebody to change. All of those things and more, they all apply to you. So take some time, look through the rest of my videos, go to my website, check out my books. I have a brand new devotional, Change My Relationship, 365 daily devotions for Christians in difficult relationships. Will give you so much comfort, so much input, so much information, so many tips and tools that you can implement in your relationships with your narcissistic child and with other difficult people. So I really appreciate you taking this time. I hope that this gave you some type of encouragement. I didn't give you an answer, didn't promise you anything. I just told you that there is some hope for change in some of your relationships, depending on all of those factors. So thank you for watching, and I hope I will see you back again.